Bear with us. Technical difficulties. It's really user error. You got it? Okay. So in Revelation 7 there, again, we see that after these things, which if you look at verse 6 there, chapter 6 and verse 17, it says, "For the great day of his wrath is come, who shall be able to stand?" So we see here that what just happened? Well, we're in the great day of the wrath of God, or the wrath of the Lamb that we're dealing with here. Then it says after these things. So we're coming into after, the sun and moon are darkened and the great day of his wrath has come. I believe we're in that day still, okay? But the idea there is that you can't say that the day of the Lord is happening after this, or, it's straight in order here. It says, "And after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads." So just like in chapter 6, if you remember, we had the 5th seal was open, you had the souls of men underneath the altar, basically saying, "How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not avenge our blood?" And the answer is, wait a little season. So he had not avenged their blood yet. And then in chapter 7 here, the day of the Lord's coming, right? It is come, but he still hasn't started destroying the earth yet. Because he's telling these angels, these 4 angels, saying, don't hurt the earth yet. Not until they seal these servants of God, and we're going to be getting into that, the 144,000. But who are these 4 angels, right? And it says the 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth. And so I'm sure there's some flat tart out there, some flat earther that's going to be like, see, there's 4 corners, therefore the earth is flat. It's, other places talks about the 4 quarters, of the earth. And you know what? It talks about the corners of your beard, okay? Is my face flat right now? It says not to mar the corners of your beard. So obviously when we're talking about corners, there's corners to, like, my head is roughly round, right? Whatever you want to call it. It's a ball. No, it's but so that being said, these people will pull this stuff out and be like, see, the earth is flat, there's corners. See, if there's corners, that doesn't mean it's flat. It's just, talking about the quadrants. Anyway, all to say, you know why? You know why it says 4 corners of the earth? Because then it's talking about the 4 winds of the earth. And what do you have? North, south, east, and west. Okay, you have the 4 directions. That's what we're talking about. And then go to Zechariah chapter 6. Zechariah chapter 6. Now, we went to Zechariah when we were dealing with the horsemen. You had the 4 horsemen that were mentioned in Revelation chapter 6. And now we know that those horsemen are not of God. That is, the tribulation. That's the Antichrist coming on the scene. And you have basically the devil working in there. Okay? And in Revelation chapter 12, we're going to see that that's the devil. He's working. The Antichrist is on the scene. He's working. And then the devil is going to set up the Antichrist over the one world government. All that stuff is tribulation, then going into great tribulation. That's not God doing that. Okay? You say, well, God puts, he's in control of everything. Really? Then why does it say that the dragon gave him his power and seat of authority when it comes to the Antichrist? Now, I'm getting ahead of myself, but the idea there is that it's not God who's doing all that. But remember that the devil wants to be like God. Okay? So if he wants to be like God, he's going to try to imitate God. And that's why the white horse, he's wanting to be like Christ, coming in on a white horse. But there's obviously differences. But even those 4 horsemen, he's trying to be like God, because you're going to see here that the 4 spirits of the heavens, or I believe these 4 angels, are represented by those 4 types of horses. Okay? Notice what it says in Zechariah chapter 6 and verse 1. It says, "And I turned and lifted up mine eyes, and looked, and behold, there came 4 chariots out from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were mountains of brass. In the first chariot were red horses, and in the second chariot black horses, and in the third chariot white horses, and in the fourth chariot grizzled and bay horses." Sound familiar? Now, it's in a little different order as far as Revelation 6, because you had what? You had the white, red, black, and then you had pale. But you can imagine that the grizzled and the bay horses would be what we're talking about with the pale horse, right? A pale horse is like, it's not white, but it's kind of like off-colored, if you will, or, grizzled and bay, is what I would describe it as. But the idea here is that the devil is pulling from what God has and trying to imitate it. And we saw that the red horse, what did that represent? That the red horses were going about seeking, throughout the earth, and said the earth is still, meaning that it's at rest. And what does the red horse do? It takes peace from the earth in Revelation chapter 6. Okay? Now, look at what it says here in verse 4. So you have these, notice the difference though. A chariot of horses. Okay? So God's spirits, these four spirits that we're going to see of the heavens, or these four angels, they're on a chariot with horses. So multiple horses. It says, then I answered, verse 4. Then I answered and said unto the angel that talked with me, what are these, my Lord? And the angel answered and said unto me, these are the four spirits of the heavens, which go forth from standing before the Lord of all the earth. Sound familiar? Because you have these four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth. These are the four spirits of the heavens, which go forth from standing before the Lord of all the earth. It says, the black horses which are therein go forth into the north country, and the white go forth after them, and the grizzled go forth toward the south country. And the bay went forth and sought to go, that they might walk to and fro through the earth. And he said, get you hence, walk to and fro through the earth. So they walked to and fro through the earth. Then cried he upon me, and spake unto me, saying, behold, these that go toward the north country have quieted my spirit in the north country. Now, I just read this to show you that they're kind of going through these different directions, right? These four angels, or these four spirits, are going throughout the earth in these different directions. And specifically in Zechariah, it's probably dealing with a specific situation dealing with back then. So Zechariah was after the 70-year captivity, and there's stuff going on, okay, when you're dealing with, the Persian Empire and the Grecian Empire and all that stuff. And that goes into Daniel chapter 11. You got the king of the north, king of the south, and all that stuff, okay? I don't want to get deep into that. But that being said is that they have a specific job. Obviously, all of God's angels have specific jobs, okay? Notice what it says in Hebrews chapter 1. I just want to point out, you say, well, it says spirits there. It doesn't say angels. So go to Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 7. This doesn't really show you the meaning of what's going on in Revelation 7, but I just want you to see that, hey, this fits hand in glove with what the Bible has already taught before we get to Revelation. But it also shows you that, hey, we had the counterfeit, it's time for the real thing, right? The devil's trying to do his thing. And remember this, that the token of the righteous judgment of God is to trouble them that trouble you, or I'm gonna mess up that quote really bad right now. Bear with me. I don't want to mess that up. But the idea is that they're going to reap what they sow, and it's going to come back upon them. Which is a manifest token of the righteous judgment of God, that ye may be counted worthy counted worthy of the kingdom of God, for which ye also suffer, seeing it is a righteous thing with God to recompense tribulation to them that trouble you. That's it. Meaning he's going to recompense tribulation to them that trouble you. That's what tribulation means. So, we're going through tribulation, then great tribulation, but guess what? It's coming back on them. Okay? And so the real thing's about to happen. The imitation failed. The imitation, of the devils has failed. And now it's Christ coming, and the real thing's happening to them. Okay? The true God with his ministers, with his army, all this stuff is coming back on them. Okay? So you can see how that would fit. But notice in Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 7, just to show you that angels are spirits, it says, and of the angels he saith, who maketh his angels spirits, and his ministers a flame of fire. Okay, so as angels are called spirits, they're inherently a spirit. They're not like in this physical world, right? So in this physical world, we have flesh and all this stuff. We're not dealing with what we call the metaphysical, right? You think of metaphysical, but Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 14, it says, "Are they not all ministering spirits sent forth to minister for them who shall be heirs of salvation?" So not only are angels spirits, but they're ministering spirits. They're ministering spirits. They're made to minister to us. That's the reason that God made them. And he made them to minister unto God. And they're obviously worshiping God and doing, what God tells them to do. They're messengers, right? And the whole point of them is to basically give us messages. And that's what angel even means. The word angel means a messenger. That's why at the very beginning of Revelation, you have the 7 angels of the 7 churches, and he'd speak unto the angel of a certain church. He's talking about the messenger of that church, or the pastor or the leader of that church that's giving the messages, right? I'm giving you a message right now from the Lord. Obviously, it should be from the Bible, and not just my own message. But go to Revelation chapter 7 again. So that kind of gives you an idea. Okay, you got these 4 angels on the 4 corners of the earth with the 4 winds of the earth, but they're commanded not to hurt the earth yet, or the heaven, or the sea, or anything. So at this point, has God dealt out any wrath yet? No, it's actually very clear that he hasn't. It's being very clear that he has not avenged the blood of the saints yet, that he has not actually even hurt the earth yet. So you can look at like these seals where you have the fact that, okay, there's famine, there's wars, all this stuff's going on, but it doesn't actually show anything that's God. Actually, it's being very clear that it's not God, that he has not done that yet. Now, let's get into who these servants are. Because he's saying that they have the seal of the living God. So this angel is coming out of the east, having the seal of the living God. And in Revelation chapter 7, we see who this is for. Verse 4, it says of Revelation 7, I heard the number of them which were sealed. And there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. Now let's just read them. Of the tribe of Judah were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Reuben were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Gad were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Asher were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Nephthalim were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Manasseh were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Simeon were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Levi were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Issachar were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Zebulun were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Joseph were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Benjamin were sealed 12,000. Now, when it says that it's 12,000 out of these tribes, I take that literally. Okay? This is not, it's just the Jews. Okay? That he's going to seal 144,000 Jews. Okay? But if it was that, he would just say, 144,000 Israelites, or something like that, or 144,000 Jews. Actually, the only time Jews are mentioned in Revelation, it's always in a negative light. It says, that they say they are Jews and are not, but do lie, but are of the synagogue of Satan. So if you want to look up Jews in Revelation, not going to find a good reference. But in here, we see that we're talking about Israelites. Now, go to 2 Kings chapter 16. 2 Kings chapter 16. Now, I want to show you that just because someone was of Israel doesn't mean they're a Jew. That term Jew is first mentioned here in 2 Kings chapter 16. Jew does not mean Hebrew. Okay? Abraham was not a Jew, and I'm going to tell you why that doesn't make any sense. Because Jew was referring to those of Judah. Okay? The southern kingdom of Judah. So in your homework, you can read in 1 Kings chapter 16, I believe, is where you have this split. Okay? Where you have the split where you had Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Okay? So after Solomon died, Rehoboam was given the southern kingdom, and Jeroboam took 10 tribes with him. But Rehoboam, he took Judah, and I believe Simeon went with him. And so Judah is not just Judah, but Judah is like Simeon. A lot of the Levites went down there. So a lot of the Levites didn't have any inheritance or lot. So they could go wherever they want in any type of tribe. But a lot of the Levites came down, and other people came down later on as well and joined that nation of Judah. So when you get to Rehoboam and Jeroboam, after that it's always the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. Kingdom of Israel, the kingdom of Judah. And you go through the king's lines and you're like, in this year of the king of Israel, this king in Judah started to begin to reign. Okay? There's an obvious split in kingdoms. In 2 Kings chapter 16, notice what it says here in verse 5. It says, Then Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to war, and they besieged Ahaz, but could not overcome him. So get the picture here. You have the king of Syria and the king of Israel, that northern kingdom that has most of the tribes, is going against Jerusalem and against King Ahaz, who's king of Judah. Here's the first mention of Jews. Verse 6. At that time, Rezin, king of Syria, recovered Elath to Syria and drave the Jews from Elath, and the Syrians came to Elath and dwelt there unto this day. First mention of Jews, who are we talking about? Those that were of Judah. And the same thing applies in the New Testament. When you're talking about Jews, you're talking about those of Judea. Okay, Judea, Judah. That's why they're called Jews. Okay, and so to say this is 144,000 Jews is just to be ignorant of what the Bible teaches. Because you're telling me the tribe of Reuben is a Jew? You're telling me Abraham's a Jew when he's the one that fathered Isaac, Jacob, and then Jacob fathered Judah. Okay, so that means that you can't go back with that and be like, well, they're Jews. It's be like, they're of Judah? That doesn't make any sense. Now I know that Levi gave tithes through the loins of Abraham, and that's another subject for another day. Okay, meaning that. But the idea to say that that Abraham's of Levi would be weird. That doesn't make any sense. And the same thing with Judah. And so that being said is that Jews are referring to the southern kingdom. Now in Jesus' day, that's pretty much all that was left. You had Samaria, right? You had Galilee, Samaria, and Judea. And Judea and Galilee were kind of considered Israel. And then you had, but really more so Judea. Samaria was not considered Israel. They're just like, that's not Israel. And if you know the story, when Israel was taken out, Samaria was the capital city of that northern kingdom. You know what happened is they took all the Israelites out and put all their people back in, and they basically took the religion of the Jews and, for lack of better terms, bastardized it into their polytheistic type of views. So when you're in Judea in Jesus' day, you're dealing with the fact that Samaritans basically kind of have this hybrid religion that has a little portion of the true religion, if you will, of the Bible. Okay, so a little history lesson there. To say that these 144,000 are Jews is just not biblically accurate. And when you're in the Old Testament talking about Israel, like King David and the Israelites, to call them Jews is not biblically accurate. Okay, but after that, if you're talking about the king of Hezekiah, and you called them all Jews, that would make sense because they're of the kingdom of Judea or Judah. Okay, so that being said, we're talking about physical people from these tribes. So this stuff is future. Okay, even if you're a preterist, this stuff had to be after 70 AD, right? Even if you believe in something like that, this is still after Jesus was resurrected, all that stuff. Show me today the tribe of Reuben. Show me any tribe. And talk to any Jew and ask them if they know what tribe they're from. None of them know. And some of them will claim that they know that they're of Levi, of the priestly line or whatever, but they don't know. And the New Testament says to avoid genealogies, that we're not supposed to be looking back into this endless genealogy to figure out what tribe you're from anyway. And in the end, it doesn't matter because in Christ, there's not a Jew nor Greek. We're all one in Christ. So the idea of needing genealogies is out the door. That stopped when Jesus was born and Jesus came into this world and Jesus died for us and he rose again and he is on his throne, there's no more need for genealogy. The only genealogy that matters in the New Testament is the genealogy of Jesus. After that, you might as well throw it out the door. It doesn't matter. You say, okay, well, if you take this literal, that these are 12,000 of each of these tribes, and there's no tribe today, then who are these people, and where did they come from, and what are you talking about, right? Well, go to Revelation chapter 14. Revelation chapter 14 gives us some light on the 144,000, who they are. So Revelation 14 and Revelation 7 happen exactly the same, meaning that what you have in Revelation 7, 144,000, and then you have the rapture. Then in Revelation 14, you have 144,000, then the rapture. Okay, so these are parallel. You can put them together and see exactly what's going on here. Where are these 144,000 when they're sealed? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Are they here on earth? Or are they in heaven? And what I'm going to show you here is that I believe they're actually in heaven before we're even raptured out. Okay, before God starts pouring out his wrath, meaning that we're dealing with Old Testament saints. And listen, throughout the history of the children of Israel, you could find what I'm going to show you here is some pretty strict requirements to be the 144,000, to be these people of to be the servants of God. It's not just that you're of that tribe that you're picked, okay, or that you're in this number, okay. In verse 1 here of Revelation 14, it says, "And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Sion, and with him 144,000." Everybody's looking at me like, you did it to yourself. I needed some coffee, though. But that coffee always dries out my throat. So he's on the Mount Sion with him and 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. Now, before I read any further, in Revelation 7 it says, don't hurt the earth, the sea, or anything until the servants of God are sealed. Does that make sense? Basically, timeline is, don't touch anything until these servants are sealed. In Revelation 14, they're already sealed. Right? Does that make sense? Having his Father's name written in their foreheads. So it's already happened. Where are they at? Well, it said that they're on the Mount Sion. Now, you can argue and say, well, I think that's the physical Mount Sion in Jerusalem, physically on this earth. Well, let's keep reading. "And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps, and they sung as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders." And notice it, you say, well, that's the angels singing it. Okay, keep reading. "And no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth." Where are they at? They're at the throne of God. Well, maybe the throne's down here on Mount Sinai. Well, what's the Bible say? The Bible says this in Psalm 11, verse 4. It says, "The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven." Heaven is his throne, and the earth is his footstool. So if they're at the throne on Mount Sion, then they're in heaven. Go to Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews chapter 12, just to show you what we're talking about here. So get the picture here. You have these four angels over the four winds of the earth that are told, don't hurt anything yet until we seal these servants. And then we see in Revelation 14 that these servants are sealed, but they're still in heaven. The reason for the sealing is so they don't get hurt by the wrath of God. Okay? And in Hebrews chapter 12, I just wanted to show you Mount Sion and talking about this is in heaven. Because there's a Mount Sion in heaven. It says in verse 22, "But ye are come unto Mount Sion, and unto the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to an innumerable company of angels, to the general assembly and church of the firstborn, which are written in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of just men made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaketh better things than that of Abel." So when it says that you see the Lamb stood on the Mount Sion, and they're before the throne of God, we're in heaven. and they have the seal already upon their head. So we know that Revelation 7, they must have been in heaven when they got sealed, because that wouldn't make sense if they're not sealed and they're on the earth, but then they're in heaven and then they're sealed and then they come back down to the earth. They're just going up and down, up and down, up and down. Or are they already there? Which makes sense because in the history of Israel, notice these requirements. Go to Revelation chapter 14 again. What's the requirements, as far as who are these people? Is it men, women, or what? And again, I take this literally. I'm not going to spiritualize this. I believe it's a literal 12,000 of the tribe of Reuben. It's 12,000 Reubenites and 12,000 Gadites. And notice what it says in verse 4 there. It says, "These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the firstfruits unto God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God." Now, we know that just saved people in general, it says, "In whose spirit is no guile," meaning that when you get saved, whosoever is born of God doth not commit sin, for his seed remaineth in him, and he cannot sin because he's born of God. So we know that they're saved, obviously. We're not talking about he just, because that's where, it goes off the rails with this 144,000. They're like, well, when Jesus comes back, the Jews are going to see that, and then they're going to all believe. You know what the Bible says? That when Jesus comes back, he's going to send strong delusion that those which believe not the truth may all be damned, who had pleasure in unrighteousness and did not believe the truth. Okay? So it's actually opposite of what they're saying. Because, by the way, if they see Jesus coming in the clouds, that's not faith. Because, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It's no longer faith if they see it, if they have to see it to believe it. But it also would you're basically just kind of throwing out the physical meaning of what's being said, and you're just basically making up stuff. Oh, this is Jews. And, or virgins, you'd have to say what. So what we're saying here, or what we're seeing here, is that these are virgin men that were Old Testament saints that were they were saved, right? But they were virgins. Okay? So that being said, that's who you're dealing with there. So David is not in the 144,000, right? Because he obviously wasn't a virgin. He was married and all this other stuff. So anybody that you see in the Bible that was married, that was in these tribes, they can't be a part of that. I don't know who all this would be, but at the same time, I take it literally. I believe you're dealing with 12,000 virgin men of the tribe of Reuben, 12,000 virgin men of the tribe of Gad, 12,000 virgin men of the tribe of Manasseh that are in heaven right now that God is going to seal, and they're going to come down to the earth. Anna, sit down. So you say, well, that's weird that God would send down someone from heaven to the earth. Well, we haven't got to this yet, but they're the two witnesses that stand before the God of all the earth. Notice that they're standing before the God of all the earth, are going to come down and be a witness for 3.5 years. We'll get to that in Revelation chapter 11 when you're dealing with these two witnesses, which I believe is very clear that it's Moses and Elijah. It even says that in the days of their prophecy, meaning that it's pointing back that this is when they prophesied in time past. These people, that they're from time past, okay? So if Moses and Elijah have this ministry or this witness that they're doing in Jerusalem, I believe the 144,000 are going to be there after we're raptured to preach the gospel. It's interesting because what's the next thing stated when we see the 144,000 mention who they are, that they're sealed in their foreheads? Look at verse 6 of Revelation 14. Verse 6 of Revelation 14 says this, "And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters." So get this, in Revelation 7 and Revelation 14, these 144,000 are sealed, then we're taken up into heaven. What about everybody else that's on the earth? You say, well, they can just read the Bible and get saved. Really? How shall they hear without a preacher? You know, the Bible says that, that there was an Ethiopian eunuch reading the Bible, and he said, understand this without reading this. He said, how can I except some man should guide me? The Bible's very clear that you need a preacher, that the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith. So you need a saved person, a believer, to show someone how to be saved. So if all the believers are taken out, who's getting anybody saved during that time? You say, well, no one's getting saved during that time. I don't believe that. Actually, I do believe people get saved during the wrath of God. Obviously, no one that takes the mark of the beast is going to get saved. Okay? But not everybody's going to take the mark of the beast. And there's people that were children during that time that are growing up, that are, in those years that are, like the 3.5 years that are going to be going by there, that may get saved. And there's going to be people going into that 1,000-year reign that are living. Okay? So I believe that's their purpose, just as much as the two witnesses, their purpose is to preach and be a witness. And what happens at the end of their witness? They're taken up. They die. They're killed by the false prophet. So they can't be in glorified bodies. Okay? Because you can't kill something that's immortal. Okay? So what I believe about this, before we get into, I'm going to get to another subject there, but before we get into the rapture, and again, this doesn't really tell us about them. We know the two witnesses are going to literally be killed, and then God's going to say, come up hither, and then they're caught up in a cloud and go up into heaven. Okay? Meaning that when we are raptured, we're all changed. Okay? But what about the two witnesses? What about Moses and Elijah? At that point, I don't believe they're in glorified bodies yet. And the same thing with the 144,000. I believe that the 144,000 will be like the two witnesses that will be changed at that moment. And that's why I don't believe you see, it talks about the first resurrection after everything's done up till when Satan's put into the bottomless pit. Okay? So that's kind of getting a little deep there on, okay, well, what these 144,000 are Old Testament saints, are they in glorified bodies? Can they be killed? Same thing with the two witnesses. I don't believe that they are in that glorified state yet. Or else, why would they need to be sealed? To not be hurt by the wrath of God. And how did the two witnesses die? They literally die for 3.5 days, right? So that being said is that, that has to be the case, that they're not in their glorified bodies. But when those two witnesses are taken up before the seventh trumpet blows or sounds, that's when they're in that resurrected state. Okay? It doesn't tell us what happens with the 144,000. It doesn't tell us that the beast or anybody can kill them. We know that when they try to kill the two witnesses, fire and brimstone comes out of their mouth and destroys anybody that tries to kill them. But that the beast will eventually overtake them and kill them, and they're going to die, and they're going to see their bodies in the streets, and then the spirit of life is going to come back in them, and they're going to go up into heaven. And I believe at that moment is when they're in a resurrected state. Okay. So I know that's a little deep, but if you want to see, okay, well, what's the purpose of the two witnesses? I believe that's the same purpose of the 144,000. It's just that the two witnesses have a local ministry in Jerusalem, but what about the rest of the world? So the rest of the world, I believe these 144,000 servants of God will be spread around throughout the whole world to be a witness and to preach the everlasting gospel. And by the way, that everlasting gospel is the same gospel we believe. It's the same gospel that Abraham believed. It's the same gospel that Adam believed, and Abel believed, and Seth believed, and Noah believed, and it'll always be that way. And it'll be the same gospel that all those that are in the 1,000-year reign will believe. Because if any man preach any other gospel unto you than that which ye have received, let him be accursed. And that'll be true to the end of time. There's only one gospel, and that's the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That is the fact that you believe on the Lord for salvation. That is how you're saved. It's never been by works. It never will be by works. And that's what they'll be preaching. Now, look at Genesis chapter 49. I'm going to touch on something really quick. Where's the tribe of Dan in that 144,000? Okay? So when you read that list, what you're going to see is you're going to see Manasseh and Joseph mentioned. Now, Manasseh is the son of Joseph. So Joseph had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, right? Manasseh was actually the older, but Ephraim ended up being a greater nation. Okay, and you can go back and see the whole story about how Jacob blesses Ephraim above Manasseh and saying Manasseh is going to be blessed, but not as much as Ephraim, even though he's the younger. Okay, but the thing is that Dan's not mentioned in this list. So you had either Joseph or Manasseh taking his place there. Now Joseph, a lot of times in the Bible, is Ephraim, right? It'll talk about, it's kind of like Judah, the southern kingdom, would be likened unto Judah. And sometimes the northern kingdom, instead of saying Israel, will just say Ephraim or Joseph, because that's the major tribe in there. Same thing with Judah. Judah was the major tribe. That's what made up most of that kingdom, although there was other tribes sprinkled throughout it. But in Genesis chapter 49, we kind of already hit on this when we were talking about that Jesus was the Lion of the tribe of Judah and how it prophesied about that. And it says in verse 1 there that Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. So we're talking about last days or events here. Look at verse 16 when we're talking about Dan. Now, this is just a theory. Okay? But again, it doesn't really matter. God says these are the 12 tribes that are going to be there. If Dan's not there, he didn't want him to be there. But here's the theory. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path, that biteth the horse heels, so that his rider shall fall backward. I have waited for thy salvation, O Lord. So think about in the New Jerusalem, there's two different sets of 12 names, right? You have the 12 tribes of Israel, then you have the 12 apostles. Well, it doesn't say what the names of the apostles are, but I guarantee one name that's not going to be there. And that is going to be Judas Iscariot. Okay? It's Matthias, right? He was replaced. So think about that logic and the fact that he's likened unto a serpent and an adder, by the way. And what's he biting at the horse's what? Heels. And it talks about the serpent in the Garden of Eden, that the serpent is going to what? Bruise his heel, and he shall bruise his head. Talking about how that Jesus is going to bruise Satan's head. Okay? So it could be the fact that Dan was replaced, just like Judas. Okay? That's a theory. Okay? In the end, does it really matter? Do we really need to figure out why Dan's not there? But apparently, when we go to the door, some people, that's all they care about, right? I mean, I remember this guy that I give him the gospel, and he's just like, but what about the tribe of Dan? It's like, who cares about the tribe of Dan if you're unsaved? You need to get saved, okay? But the funny part about that story, or the sad part, however you want to look at it, is we went back like a year or two later, ran into the same guy, same thing. He's like, what about the tribe of Dan? I'm like, you're on that same hobby horse. Get a new subject. But it's like, you know what? Salvation is more important than why Dan's not mentioned in the 144,000. Okay? So, that being said, that's a theory. Here's another theory. God can't force anybody to get saved. And Dan is a very small tribe. Okay? If you study the tribes of Israel, Ephraim is obviously huge, right? Manasseh is pretty big because it's got half tribe of Manasseh on one side of the River Jordan and another half on the other side, right? Judah's obviously big. It's called the whole nation of Judah. So there's some tribes that are bigger than others, and Dan is just not that big of a tribe in general. So it could be the fact that, you know what, there just wasn't 12,000 of the tribe of Dan that were saved virgin men in time past. And so he had to pull it from another tribe, okay? Because God doesn't force people to get saved or stay pure or anything like that, okay? And actually, if you want to think about it, Dan doesn't have a good reputation of being pure. Because when you think about the tribe of Dan, the first person I think about is Samson. Samson was of the tribe of Dan. And by the way, the story in Judges about Micah, you know, the guy that basically was like the priest and went around, you know, the images and all that stuff, Dan. So I'm not here to just brag on Dan. Brother Dan, you got a good name. I'm not here to just be like, Dan is just an adder and a serpent and he's cursed, you know. What I'm saying, though, is that those are two valid opinions as far as why Dan's not mentioned in that list, okay? But in the end, does it really matter It's just, here's what it is. There's going to be 12,000 of Manasseh, and there's going to be 12,000 of Joseph, which I believe particularly would be Ephraim, right? And that's the way it is. Dan's not mentioned. Dan doesn't have 12,000 that are representing God as the servants of God. And it's not that big of a deal when you think about that Jesus, did I not choose you 12 and one of you is the devil? There's a, I don't know if there's a precedent because obviously the tribes came before the apostles, but we're in Revelation. So there's a precedent to the fact that you had the 12 apostles and one of them had to be replaced. Okay, that's just a theory. In the end, I believe what it says. I believe it's 12,000 of each one of those tribes, and that's the way it should be. The next thing that happens is clearly the rapture. And for someone to say that this isn't the rapture, because people are like, oh, the rapture's not in the book of Revelation. That's interesting, because the day of the Lord is mentioned as far as Jesus coming in the clouds. It seems to be a big event to not be mentioned in probably the most crucial book on end times prophecy. Like, oh, the rapture's just not mentioned. Well, let's see if it's mentioned. The reason they don't think it's mentioned is because of what it says, okay? But let's see what we see here. Verse 9. After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which no man can number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. Now, for the life of me, I'd like to know how the Jehovah's Witnesses get away with this. So the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that that there's only 144,000 people that'll be in heaven, and everybody else will be on the earth. Okay? But here it says that there's a multitude which no man can number that's at the throne of God. Okay? So if there's a number that no man can number, and he just mentioned 144,000, it's literally in the chapter of the 144,000, and they're saying, no, it's only 144,000. Everybody else has to be down here on the earth. It's actually the opposite. The 144,000 are being brought to the earth, and a great multitude which no man can number can be in heaven. It's going to be in heaven. Isn't it funny how these false cult, religions actually have it completely backwards? It's like salvation's always backwards. Oh, you got to be a good person. You got to live a good life. What does the Bible say? It's not by works at all. Therefore, we conclude that we're justified by faith and not by the deeds of the law. It's completely opposite of what they say. And it's quite amusing to see how off they are. Now, obviously, they don't believe the Bible. They have their Watchtower, and they have their New World Translation, and they obviously are going off man's wisdom and man's teachings and not the Bible. But we see that there's a great multitude which no man can number. And the question you have to ask yourself is, where did they come from? Who are these people, right? It's interesting because that question is answered. And it says, so keep reading there. It says, and cried with a loud voice, saying, salvation to our God, which sitteth upon the throne and unto the Lamb. Now, you know what? I want you to think about this for a second. We're going to be in that group. You ever want to have the Bible personalized to you? Know this, is that we're going to be in that group. Because we're alive right now. And when Jesus comes in the clouds, it's going to be the dead in Christ that are going to rise first, and then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds. That's going to be us. That is literally writing what we will be doing at the throne of God. It says we're going to cry with a loud voice, saying, salvation to our God, which sitteth upon the throne and unto the Lamb. And all the angels stood round about the throne and about the elders and the four beasts, and fell before the throne on their faces and worshiped God, saying, amen, blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be unto our God forever and ever. Amen. So I love thinking about this because, you know what? It's awesome to think, that John could literally be looking at one of us. Now, it's a great multitude, okay? So let's give him a break. He's probably not going to be locked, but he could very well be looking at one of us. And saying, here's a great multitude, and seeing, because you're going to be seeing everybody from Adam up to where they're at when the rapture happens. That's who is always going to be standing there. And it's just awesome to think about the fact that 2,000 years ago, when this is being written down, he's seeing this vision of future events and people that haven't been born yet that he's seeing standing before the throne of God in that event. Okay. Sometimes you just need to step in there and see, okay, we're in this. This is going to be us right here. It says in verse 13. This is where it's funny. I always read this and laugh. Okay? It says, and one of the elders answered, saying unto me, what are these which are arrayed in white robes, and whence came they? And I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. Isn't that how is that not funny? That he's literally seeing this vision, he sees this great multitude, and this angel is the one that's telling, or this elder is telling him these things, right? And this angel showing him these things and all this stuff. And the elder's saying, who are these people? To John, who doesn't know, right? He's like, basically like, Sir, thou knowest. It's like, but it's kind of like he's bringing up the question so he can answer it. Does that make sense? Because John's not asking the question. So the elder is bringing up the question so that he can answer the question. But it's still funny, right? Because he's kind of like, who are these people? You're like, I don't know. You tell me. So anyway, I always think it's funny. But let's see the answer here. It said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. And he said to me, These are they which came out of great tribulation and have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. So we're talking about people that are washed by the blood of the Lamb. We're talking about those that are saved by the blood, by faith in his blood. Those is this great multitude. And why they don't want this to be the rapture is because they came out of great tribulation. Yeah. That's why they don't want this to be the rapture. Because how in the world could you not think this is the rapture when there's this great multitude which no man can number just suddenly appears before the throne of God out of every tongue, kindred, nation, everything, that they're standing there praising God for salvation? Well, it can't be that because they came out of great tribulation. We know that we don't go through the tribulation. Well, the question you got to ask yourself is, why do you know that? Why, or what gives you the idea that we're not going to go through great tribulation? Well, because God's not a wife beater, and he said that we're not going to go through, wrath. Well, let me ask you this. Is tribulation always God's wrath? Actually, most of the time, it's not. And so they equate tribulation with God's wrath. Because the Bible says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 that we're not appointed unto wrath. And amen to that. But according to Revelation 7, has God's wrath started yet? No, Revelation 6 says that he has not yet avenged the blood of his saints. And Revelation 7 says that he hasn't even started hurting the earth yet. So how is coming out of great tribulation God's wrath? It doesn't make any sense. But the Bible does say that, yea, and all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. That we must through great tribulation, or much tribulation, enter into the kingdom of God. That the Bible says that that in the world you should have what? Tribulation. But in me you shall have peace. But be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. And so it's completely biblical that we'll go through tribulation. Actually, you know what the Bible says? It says that we're appointed unto tribulation and afflictions in 1 Thessalonians 3. It's like they didn't read 1 Thessalonians 3. And it's interesting because what do we believe? You have the tribulation, rapture, wrath. 1 Thessalonians 3 says we're appointed unto afflictions and tribulation. Chapter 4 is the rapture, most famous rapture passage in the Bible. Chapter 5 says we're not appointed unto wrath. I have zero problem with that. That lines up with everything that we believe. Because we're not appointed unto God's wrath. Because we're going to be saved out of great tribulation, and then he's going to pour out his wrath. Lines up perfectly. How about Matthew chapter 24? Matthew 24. I know we hit this last week, but let's hit it again. Matthew 24 and verse 29. It says, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. Now, where did we see that? I feel that sounds familiar. Oh yeah, in Revelation chapter 6 and verse 12 it says, And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. Okay, well, you know what? I guess the next thing that we should see, if Revelation 7 is talking about the rapture, we should see the rapture, right? Well, look at verse 30. Then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. It's interesting because he even mentions four winds, which is exactly how Revelation 7 even starts, with the four angels on the four corners of the earth, with the four winds of the earth. And I didn't even mention the fact that at the end of Revelation chapter 6, it talks about the tribes of the earth mourning. It literally happens like point by point by point, exactly the way it says it in Matthew 24. And you have to have an agenda to believe otherwise. You have to have some preconceived idea or some doctrine you're trying to fit into the Bible for you not to see this. The sun and moon are darkened after the tribulation. Chapter 7 says that this great multitude came out of great tribulation. How in the world are saved people brought out before the tribulation? Show me chapter and verse on that. This is so clear, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that people don't believe this. Like en masse, people believe that we're raptured out before the tribulation. And the Bible's very clear that we're going to go through great tribulation if we're here when it happens. Okay? But even as a Christian in general, you're going to go through tribulation. If you don't, then you're not living a godly life. Anna, get your feet off that. So the idea of not going through tribulation is just not a biblical concept. That's biblical Christianity right there. Go to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 13, because again, I just want to show you in 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, I know I kind of mentioned it to you, but I want you to see it. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, and I don't have this in my notes, so I have to turn there. 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, and look at verse 3. It says that no man should be moved by these afflictions, for yourselves know that we are appointed thereunto. For verily, when we were with you, we told you before that we should suffer tribulation, even as it came to pass, and you know. So we're appointed unto affliction, and it says we should suffer tribulation. Go to chapter 5. Chapter 5. And verse 9. For God hath not appointed us to wrath, but to obtain salvation by our Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, well, if our model is correct, that you have tribulation, you have the rapture and the wrath, then the rapture should be found between chapter 3 and chapter 5. Oh, wait, the most famous rapture passage in the whole entire Bible is in chapter 4. Seems to line up, doesn't it? That it says in chapter 3, we're appointed unto affliction, and that we should go through tribulation. Chapter 5 says we're not appointed unto wrath. Chapter 4, notice in verse 13. But I would not have you be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that ye sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God. And the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore comfort one another with these words. How can you see this any other way? I mean, even in an epistle, this is stating tribulation, rapture, wrath. And it fits hand in glove. And when you compare Matthew 24 with 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, you see everything is mentioned there. You see a sound of a trumpet. You see the angels gathering together his elect. You see it being caught up into the clouds. You see all these different things that are exactly what is mentioned in the rapture. So for someone to say, well, Matthew 24:30, that's not the rapture, or 31, that's not the rapture. And then Revelation chapter 7, that's not the rapture. Why is it not the rapture? Because it comes after the tribulation. That's their only argument. And their argument is, well, we know that he can come at any moment. Do we? So you got to ask these questions that they keep. It's like, well, we know. Do you know? Do we know that? Is that settled? It's like the science today. Well, we know that the science is settled. Do we know that the science is settled, or are you just saying that? Why don't you prove that to me? And you know what? I'm going to show you? I'm not going to say, well, we know that it's after the tribulation. Just take my word for it. You know what I'm going to show you? I'm going to show you where it says immediately after the tribulation, the sun, moon are darkened, and then shall you see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. You know what I'm going to show you? I'm going to show you Revelation 6, where it says that the sun, moon, and darkened are darkened before the great and terrible day of the Lord, and then there's a great multitude found in heaven. I'm going to show you that. And then I'm going to show you that in chapter 8 is when he starts pouring fire down on this earth. That's what I'm going to show you, because that's how it works. Because it's thus saith the Lord. It's line upon line, here a little, there a little. You know, comparing spiritual things with spiritual, not, well, we know that this is the case. No, the only reason I know this is the case is because thus saith the Lord. Because I have a Bible verse to attach to that. If you don't have a Bible verse to attach to your doctrine, then I don't want your doctrine. It's the Bible that I'm going to stand on. That's the foundation. That's the rock. Man's wisdom can go jump in a lake. And so we see that it's very clear that this great multitude which is found in heaven, that's all the saved. So at that point, all the saved from those that died, from Adam till everybody that was alive, that's who's in that great multitude. Okay. Now let's read a little further here and just finish off the chapter here. So that's the crux of the chapter, is the 144,000 and then the rapture. Okay. And we'll hit on this again because when we get to chapter 14, it's repeating it, but it's giving different elements in there. Okay. But in verse 15 there it says, therefore are they before the throne of God, and serve him day and night in his temple, and he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them, and they shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun light on them, nor any heat, for the Lamb which is in the midst of the throne shall feed them, and shall lead them unto living waters, fountains of waters, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. So the thing that I want to show you here is that some of this isn't happening the moment we're raptured. Okay? Some of this is basically saying this is happening, but then this shall happen. I want you to see the distinction here. In verse 15, it says, therefore are they before the throne of God. So obviously they're before the throne of God. There's great multitudes there. They're serving him. And it says, serve him day and night in his temple. And he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them. Okay, notice that that's not are, that's shall sit among them. And the reason that there's a distinction here is because I want you to notice that it says that they're going to serve him day and night in his temple. Okay, go to Revelation chapter 21. Because the phrase where, the tears are wiped away, I don't believe that happens until after the 1,000-year reign. After the great white throne judgment, and when you have the new heaven, new earth. Okay, so everything from halfway through on chapter 15 or verse 15 on chapter 7 to the end is dealing with new heaven, new earth, things that are going to happen after that. Okay, but all that whole multitude, that's going to happen to them. Okay, it's not like it's not going to happen. It's just at the moment of the rapture, I don't believe all tears are wiped away and some of this stuff is happening until later. Okay, and notice what it says in Revelation 21 and verse 1. It says, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. So when does this happen? When the new heaven, new earth happens, that God himself shall dwell with us. And that's what it's saying, that he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them. That's talking about the Father. Okay? That God the Father is going to dwell with us. And notice in Revelation chapter 21, the thing that I want you to notice there is in verse 22, when you have the New Jerusalem coming down, and God himself, obviously Jesus is God. You have the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. But at this point, God the Father, no one has seen his face. obviously God is light, and I believe that glory of the Father is so bright that even people that are in heaven don't see his face yet. Okay? Because in chapter 22 it says we shall see his face. Okay? And that's a significant event. So we will see his face. He will dwell among us. But notice what it says in verse 22. And I saw no temple therein, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are the temple of it. So that's kind of the key when I see what's the break point here as far as what's happening after the 1,000-year reign and what's happening before the 1,000-year reign. Is the fact that in verse 15, when it's saying we're going to serve him day and night in his temple, that can't be the new heaven, new earth, because it says there's no temple. And then when it says he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them, the fact that that's future tense, like shall dwell among them, and the fact that he's saying he's going to wipe away tears leads me to Revelation 21, okay, where it says he shall wipe away all tears, and there's no more temple, and he's going to dwell with us, and all that. Okay, that was maybe a little too deep for the end of the sermon, but that's kind of what I see going on at the end there. And all that's true, meaning like it's not like this only applies to that group. No, this applies to that group holistically. It's just the fact that some of that isn't going to happen until 1,000 years later. Okay. And being in glorified bodies, I don't think 1,000 years is going to be that bad. Okay, we're going to be ruling and reigning with Christ in a glorified body. It's not like, man, I wish that was happening then at that moment. I don't think we're going to be in a state of sorrow because we have to wait 1,000 years for that. Though we'll be looking forward to it, I'm sure. Okay, it's kind of like at that point we still have this to look forward to, where the new heaven and new earth and new Jerusalem comes down, and there's just no one dying. When we're ruling and reigning, there's still going to be people living and dying on this earth. You're going to be dealing with sorrows and all these different things that are going on. New heaven, new earth, all that's done away. You just have the saved that are in new heaven, new earth, and then you have all the lost that are in the lake of fire. So, but Revelation chapter 7, to me, Revelation 6 and 7 just completely debunk the pre-tribulation rapture. And ultimately, it just shows you a clear timeline of events. So what have we seen so far? We saw the Great Tribulation. We saw the tribulation, the Great Tribulation, and we saw the rapture. Next, you're going to see the wrath of God. And so Revelation 8, 9, 10, and 11, wrath of God. Okay? So buckle your seatbelts for that. But the thing is, and we were kind of talking about this, is that Revelation 6 and 7, they're exciting chapters because they're chapters that apply to us or could apply to us if it happens in our day. Revelation 8, 9, 10, and 11, they're interesting, but we know we're not going to be here for that. So it's one of those things where you're not like hanging on, oh, what do we got to go through? What's going to happen to us when we're in this state? No, we're obviously going to be in heaven. We're going to be witnessing this happening. So when you read those chapters, you're kind of thinking that's going to be bad. But we don't have to deal with that because we're not appointed unto wrath. Okay, let's end with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. Thank you for your word. And just pray that you'd be with us throughout the rest of this week as we go back to work and come back at the point in time. We thank you for the book of Revelation. Thank you for how clear you've shown us these events that are going to happen in the future. And Lord, just pray that you'd help us to understand it as we keep going through the book. And Lord, just pray that you'd give us understanding and help us to bring glory to your name. In Jesus Christ's name, amen. So Brother Dave will come and sing one more song, and then we'll be dismissed. Oh, yeah.
All right, take your songbooks and turn to song 303. Song 303, and if you would